Hey guys, so today we've got my final 2022 NHL mock draft. So this is going to be a full 2-round mock draft, and we're going to be starting here number one with Montreal. The draft is in a few days in Montreal, so this is my final mock draft, and I actually have I just posted my 2022 final NHL draft rankings as well, which goes over my personal rankings for the top 50 players in this draft. So the link is in the description below. Make sure to check it out. From there, I go more in depth into each of the individual players. This is a mock draft, so it's not necessarily my rankings, but what I think will happen, who I think these teams will pick. So let's get started here at number one with Montreal, and they're taking Shane Wright. There's been reports that they may take Slafkovsky, finish first on Bob McKenzie's list. That would be like a massive blunder of a pick. That would just be a terrible pick. They better pick Wright. Even if they pick Cooley, I wouldn't be that upset, but I still think Wright should be the number one overall pick. I think he's easily the best player in this draft. And even Cooley, that also I don't think would be too great of a pick. You have to take Wright here. He's a future number one center. This team needs star power. I think we have a lot of solid depth prospects who can be like top six, middle six guys on defense. We have a lot of like top four potential guys, but we are really lacking like that high end talent. We only have Caulfield and Suzuki right now. So I think we need Wright and build that 1-2 center punch that most cup teams have. We have Wright as a number one center. I think Suzuki on a cup level team, I don't necessarily think he'll be a number one center. I think he'll be better, like really good number two center, and Wright can be that true number one center who has a Selkie level two-way game, as well as one of the best shots in the league, and also which is an absolute force offensively. I think he can be a consistent 95 to 100 plus point guy in the NHL. So this has to be the pick. Next up at number two, we have the Devils. Assuming they don't trade this picks, by the way, there are no trades in this. I've been taking Slafkovsky. I said earlier, although I'm not the biggest fan of Slafkovsky, the Devils picking, if they were to pick two, they're the only team I would consider taking Slafkovsky second overall, and that is now the case. I think they will pick him. They have no need for a center right now. They have really good center depth with Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Dawson Mercer, but I think they could use some more wingers. Slafkovsky is, well, in my opinion, he's actually second best winger behind him. Yeah, it's the best, like, true natural winger. He's a big power forward. I think he would fit great on a line with Jack Hughes and Alexander Holtz. Next up at three with the Arizona Coyotes taking Logan Cooley. I think this has to be the pick here, and number three if he's available. I think Nemec wouldn't be a horrible pick, but I think Logan Cooley's still a better player, and he's going to be an elite number one center for Arizona, and a very good building block for this franchise. I hope to get kind of Bedard or so next year, and that would be an amazing 1-2 center punch if they can get Bedard next year as number one center, and then you have to play Logan Cooley as your number two. So next up at four, we have Seattle taking Simone and Mets. Nemec, I think, in my opinion, is the best offensive defenseman in this class. Seattle took Matthew Beniers second overall last year, and although I don't think he's going to be a true number one center, I think he's going to be a really good number two center, kind of like a Nick Suzuki type. But he had a very good start to the year, putting up, I think, like 8 points in 10 games towards the end of last year. So I think that's very promising. But I think at this stage, it's not really worth it to take like another center or anything. I think you go with the best player available, which I believe is Nemec. For them, he can be their number one center. He's going to be an elite puck-moving defenseman. I think a great way to start off this draft and a great building block for this franchise. Now at number five, we have the disaster as the Philadelphia Flyers, and they're taking David Jiricek. I think Jiricek's the perfect player for this team. They need more defense. Their defense is absolutely atrocious. They gave up the first and second for Rasmus Ristolainen, who was a bottom five defenseman in the entire NHL. He's horrible. Ryan Ellis was injured all of last year. He's good, but if I were them, I would trade him. He's older, doesn't really fit the timeline with his team. Like, they need to go in a rebuild. I don't know if they will. I mean, if they trade their pick for DeBrincat, like, that's not a smart idea. They need to completely tear everything down and rebuild this team, and I think Jiricek is a great guy to do that with. He can be an elite number one two-way defenseman. I think he's the potential to be a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. He's a very good prospect, and I think he can kind of be that elite number one defenseman. You already have Sanheim, who's good. I think they have some guys to work with. Cam York as well as a good prospect, but David Jiricek can really be that guy in the back end. Now at number six, we have Columbus taking Cutter Gauthier. If I were them, I wouldn't make this pick, but I think it does look pretty likely that they're going to pick Gauthier. If I were to bet on this, I would bet that they take either Gauthier or Matthew Savoie here at number six. I would definitely prefer taking Matthew Savoie, but It does look like they're big fans of Gauthier. A lot of people have Gauthier going here at 6 for Columbus, and he's a guy who's produced a lot. He had 65 points in 54 games, including 34 goals in the USN TDP. He can play the center or the wing. I think he'll probably end up being kind of a sniper on the wing for his team, and he can do great on maybe Kent Johnson's wing. At 7, we have Ottawa taking Joachim Kimmel. He's a sniper, and I think Ottawa needs a sniper. So this pick, honestly, to me, makes perfect sense. I don't see... They could go something like Savoie or something like that. Lambert, obviously, I think would be a great pick. I don't necessarily think they're going to do that, but I think they're going to really like Savoie. Kimmel, with his production, he can be a very good top 6 right wing. I think that's the one thing they're missing. They need finishers, guys who can score, and that is exactly what Kimmel is. At 8, we have Detroit, and Eiserman is going to be the guy to pick Brad Lambert off the board. I think he's going to be smart enough and realize Lambert's talent and how good he really is as a player, how good he is beyond the production, and he's going to be the one to take him here at number 8. I think this is a fantastic pick. We know how much Eiserman likes his Europeans. He likes those projectable, high upside guys, and he's not afraid to take who he wants off the board, even if it seems a little high. And Lambert at 8, I think it shouldn't seem high. For some people, it might, but I think here at 8, this is a great spot. I could definitely see this happening, and I think Lambert would do great with Lucas Raymond on his wing. That could be amazing, I think, and he can end up being a superstar on this team in the future. At 9, we have Buffalo taking Matthew Savoie. I think this is a great pick. I think Lambert's the best skater in this class. Savoie's the second best skater. Just a really good skater and all around just really good offensive talent. I think would fit very well in Buffalo. They already have a lot of centers, but I think if Savoie's available at 9, you've got to take him. He's arguably a top 5 player in the draft. You already have Dylan Cousins, he's a center, but he also plays the wing too. So maybe you move him to the wing. And overall, I think at this point, you're kind of just trying to take the best player available for this team. At 10, you have Anaheim, and they're taking Jonathan Mackie. He's also risen a lot throughout the year. He's a high upside guy. He put up 9 points in 26 games in the SHL. He's a very good goal scorer, but he's not just that. I think Anaheim already has a lot of solid goal scorers. Mason McTavish is a good one, but I think you kind of need more. Trevor Zegras is that playmaker. I think Mackie is one of the best players available on the board here, and he could be a very good top 6 right wing for Anaheim. At 11, we have San Jose taking Pavel Mintyukov. I think this pick makes perfect sense. I would definitely bet on Mintyukov going here at 11 to San Jose. I don't really think he's going to go into the top 10, but this pick is perfect for San Jose. He's a very good offensive defenseman who's also defensively responsible. He's not horrible defensively. He's much more refined than some of the other offensive defensemen in this class, but he put up really good numbers this year with the Saginaw Spirit in the OHL. And I think he can be a very good, maybe number 3 offensive defenseman in the NHL. He has a pretty good ceiling, and he's not a major risk as a prospect either. And with all their back contracts, I think at this point, you just got to take the best player available. And their defense is a complete mess. You got Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns, and Mark-Edwin Vlasic, that trifecta of horrible contracts. So I think you bring in Mintyukov. They need more defense prospects. I think they definitely take defensemen, whether it's Mintyukov, Denton Matejchuk, maybe Kevin Korchinski here. But I think they have to take a defenseman. They're already really good at forward depth for prospects, guys like William Eklund, Thomas Bordeleau, Aldi Weisblatt. So I think you have to take a defenseman, and Mintyukov is that guy. At 12, we have Columbus taking Frank Nazar. So I think this is a really good pick for them. He put up 70 points in 56 games with the USN TDP. He has center and wing flexibility. So you take a pair of American USN TDP guys with him and Gauthier. I think they could go defense here for sure, but I think they're going to really like Nazar. This is, I think, a pretty good spot for him. I think I have him kind of as a borderline top 10 guy in this class, so I think they're going to pick him up and really solidify their top 6 forward group for the future. Now at 13, we have the Islanders taking Connor Geekie. I don't really know about this pick. I think it would not be bad, and I've heard the Islanders are kind of linked to Geekie. I do hope they actually trade there's been reports that they're interested in trading their pick to Montreal. Josh Anderson would be great, getting rid of Josh Anderson and getting the 13th pick, but assuming they stay here, I think they could go a multitude of directions. I'm not necessarily sure about this one, but I think Geekie is I think he's a good player for them. They need more of a scoring hit. I think Geekie's a very big player. We've already got some skill guys, Barzell. So I think you bring Geekie as a bigger power forward guy who maybe have a limited upside, but if he can fix his skating, I think he could really be a top player in this class. At 14, we have Winnipeg taking Denton Matejchuk. They do still need more defensemen. Really, their only defenseman that's on the team right now for the future is Neil Pionk. And of course, you have Billy Hainola and Dylan Sandberg. Other than that, I think their defense prospect pool is still fairly shallow. I think they can add more to it. They have a lot of already really good forward prospects with Cole Perfetti. They took Nikita Chibukov last year. I know I'm forgetting a couple of guys, but I think you still need to have more defensemen. If Matejchuk, if his game translates to the NHL, and he can maybe get coached out of some of his tendencies to go overcommit on offense, and he can be a bit more refined defensively, I think he can be a very good number 2, number 3 defenseman. This could be a great pick for Winnipeg. And at 15, we have Vancouver taking Noah Ostlund. He is one of the most underrated players in the class for me. And I think at 15 to Vancouver, I think the fit is really good here. Ostlund's a very dynamic, he's a very good offensive player with all the tool speed, a very good top 6 center, very good second line center. And I think we'll see what happens with Vancouver, but JT Miller is most likely gone. I think Ostlund can be a very good replacement for him in the future. I think he'll be a very good staple in this top 6 as they try to build a very skilled, oriented forward group. Now moving on to 16, we have Buffalo taking Liam Ogre. Buffalo doesn't need any centers after taking Savoie. I think they're pretty much done for centers here. Just, as you can see, they have another pick at 28. They need to, I think, they're going to stock up on some defensemen and wingers. Liam Ogre is a very good left wing, another Swede. He's a very high floor, low upside guy, but I think he will be at the very least a third liner, at best a second liner. He can be a very good middle 6 guy who's already NHL ready, could be in the NHL as soon as I think the 23-24 year. So I think that you're taking a bit more of a risk with Savoie. With your 9th overall picks, for 16, you take a very safe wing prospect in Liam Ogre. At 17, we have Nashville, and they're taking Kevin Korchinski. Kevin Korchinski is a very good offensive defenseman, very dynamic offensively. He's going to need to work on his defense, however, which is kind of a big thing for him. But Nashville needs more defense prospects. Their defense, they've got Yossi, who is getting older. Other than that, it's pretty shallow. They did actually just trade for McDonough. I don't really know about this pick, but this team is just seeming directionless. They're trying to extend their window, even though I think they may be better off just tearing it apart and going for a rebuild. But here at 17, I think Korchinski can be a very good player for the future offensively from the back end for Nashville. Now at 18, we have Dallas taking Danila Yurov. He's a very interesting player, averaged about 2 minutes a game last year in the KHL, so we barely got to see him play, so I think he's a bit of a risk, which is why he drops, but he has the potential to even be a top 5 player in this class. On top of that, he's Russian, which I think is another concern for a lot of teams, but I think talent-wise, he's right up there with a lot of guys in this class. He's very good, and Dallas doesn't need any more centers. I think you're taking a very good winger here in Yurov, who can play maybe alongside someone like Maverick Ford, can be a very good top 6 guy. At 19, we have Minnesota taking Marco Kasper. This is a very good pick. I think to a lot of people, this can be a steal, and I think some people won't see him dropping this far, but you have a couple teams here who don't really have the need for centers with Buffalo and Dallas. They don't need any centers, and Nashville as well. I think they're going to put a priority on D. I think even in the top 15, maybe I think Vancouver could take Kasper, but other than that, I think we could easily see him falling to the back end of the teens here, and I think he's a great fit. And Minnesota taking another Marco. I think you could have Marco Rossi as your number 1 center. Kasper is a very good second line center. He's like Ogre, and I think a high floor guy who will probably be at worst a very good third line center, and at best a solid second line center. At 20, we have Washington taking Philip Mazar. He's another guy who I found is a very underrated prospect. He's a bit of a boomer bust. He's a high upside guy. Could be a very good top 6 winger, even like a first line winger. I think Washington teams that's going to try to extend their championship window as long as you have Ovechkin there. I think Mazar can be a very good top 6 winger for the future for this team. They have McMichael at center. They could bring another defenseman as they don't really have much defensively, but I think Mazar is the picture at 20. Now at 21, we have Pittsburgh taking Ivan Miroshnichenko. Miroshnichenko was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, so he's going to miss a lot of the year next year, but I think things are looking up. He's already started skating, so he could be back earlier than expected. But you also couple that with a disappointing year last year, not doing particularly great, and a guy who's pretty much a consensus top 10 guy in this class has fallen to the end of the first round. Except I think there are teams that are going to be willing to take a chance on him. They're going to like what they see with his progression through his rehab, and I think he could be a very good player on Pittsburgh, like Washington, trying to extend their championship window. Miroshnichenko can be a very high upside future top 6 guy for this team. At 22, we have Anaheim taking Liam Bichelle. He's a massive hulking defenseman. He's 6'5", I think like 230 or something. So he's huge, but he's also a really good skater, which I think is a combination a lot of NHL GMs will really like. I think he's going to be very good top 4 defensive defenseman. He has a great defensive ability, a great stick. He's a great stick checker. the offense isn't necessarily there, but he's going to be a very good defenseman. I think with that size, he's a great fit with Anaheim, who already has Jamie Drysdale and Olin Zellweger, two very good offensive defensemen who are smaller. 23, we have St. Louis taking Rutger Gordy, another quite underrated player in this draft. I think this is a really good spot for him to go. And, I mean, St. Louis, I think they just need to keep building on the depth. They have some solid prospects on the forward side. I mean, Jake Neighbors, Bulldog, we'll see. I think he'll be a solid top-line guy, though, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of him. But I think McGroarty can be very good middle six center for St. Louis. 24, we have Minnesota taking Ryan Chesley. He's going to be very good at defensive defenseman in the NHL. I think he has the potential to be a top 4 defenseman. His offense production has really lagged and stagnated, but the defense is definitely still there at the very least. And I think he could be a great player on Minnesota in the future. As a lot of their defensemen are getting older, I think they're going to want to build on that depth defensively, as they do have a lot of really good young guys. And they just drafted Casper here. And of course, they have Marco Rossi and Matthew Boldy as well. At 25, we have Toronto taking Owen Beck. Owen Beck is another high floor guy like Casper, although I think he's probably going to be a solid third line center, nothing more than that. But I think that's exactly what Toronto wants. He's been linked to Toronto here, and I think this is the pick here for them. I think it would be a great pick, as they just need to improve on their depth. They don't need to get a high upside guy. They already have the talent up front on both offense and defense, but I think they need to bring in some more forward depth, and I think Owen Beck would be a potential cheap option who's fairly NHL ready. He's a great two-way player and can be a very good third-line checking center. At 26, we have Montreal with their second pick in the draft, taking Isaac Howard. I'd be ecstatic if they can get Isaac Howard here. He's all offense. He's not going to be good defensively, but he can be a very good second-line player who brings in a lot of offense, can be very good, I think 60-point guy, maybe even a 30-goal scorer. He's a very good goal scorer, and I think he could be a great guy on the wing to someone like Nick Suzuki. 27, of Arizona taking Jimmy Snuggerud. I think this is a steal here, and Snuggerud could easily go a lot higher, but he's going to be a very good two-way middle six forward. He's got a good shot. I think he'd be a solid 25-ish goal scorer in the NHL, but he also is very good defensively, is great with his stick, and also I think he even has more potential to grow. That he has some tendencies that are not great defensively that can be coached out of, but he could be a very good two-way forward for Arizona. At 28, we have Buffalo taking Lane Hudson. He's very small. He's only 5'8", 159, so a very small defenseman, but he's really high upside. I'm a big fan of him, and I hope these teams kind of grow out of their stigma against these smaller defensemen. Seeing guys like Cale Makar, Jamie Drysdale coming up, all these smaller defensemen ending up being very elite. I think Lane Hudson, although not quite the caliber of those guys, could be a very good top 4 defenseman in the NHL if he bulks up a bit. He's great offensively, and also, considering his size, he doesn't have the physicality, but he is still very good defensively as well. So I think he'd be even a solid like number 2, number 3 defenseman. The upside is unreal. I think Buffalo, after taking a couple of forwards, you're going to take a defenseman here, and Lane Hudson is that guy. 29, we have Edmonton taking a pick that I don't like, but I think they're probably going to do, in Nathan Gauthier. So Nathan Gauthier he's a big power forward-ish type guy. His production was not good. He put up, I think, like 57 points in 66 games with the Quebec Remparts and the QMJHL. So not really first-round quality numbers, but he is big. He's very physical and can kind of be that power forward guy. I think Edmonton, they have a lot of skill here, so I think they're going to kind of be hoping to bring in some more size and depth to that forward group, which Gauthier can bring. But honestly, for me, there's nothing really impressive about him. He wasn't in my top 50 prospect rankings, and I honestly don't really think he should even be a top 2-round pick in this class. He's not good offensively. He's a solid two-way player. That's the thing. He's good defensively. I think he's hoping he'd be a solid third-line checking guy. Honestly, for me, I see him as more of a max, like, fourth-line grinder type player who's decent defensively. Maybe puts up 20 points. He's pretty much an offensive liability. And maybe can do stuff defensively, but we'll see if he even ends up making the NHL. I'm not a fan of this pick, but I think it's something that I could see the idiot that is Ken Holland doing. At 30, we have Winnipeg taking Owen Pickering. They need more defense. Still, I think you brought in Matejchuk. I think you bring in another two-way, more defensively refined defenseman than Owen Pickering. At 31, we have Tampa taking Yuri Kulich. It does look like it's going to be a first-round pick. Tampa doesn't need a super high upside guy. I think you just need to take kind of best player available, as this pick, whoever they pick here, is more than likely going to be traded before they suit up for Tampa, as they don't have they have a very solid prospect pool. They don't need a big one. They're going to be competing for many more years to come. I think Kulich actually has a sneaky high upside. He could be a very good second-line center. And now at 32, to round out the first round, we have Arizona taking Tristan Luneau. They've been linked to him, and there have been reports that they are definitely interested in taking Leno here at 32. I think this could be a solid pick. He could be a very good top four defenseman if his injury concerns aren't a problem. So moving on to the second round, we're starting off with Montreal, and they're taking Seamus Casey. He's a very good, undersized offensive defenseman. He is only 5'10", which I think will deter some teams from taking him in the first round. But I think if he is available here at 33, this is a great pick for Montreal. Now, if I had this pick, I would be taking Vladimir Gradinin. I think he's the perfect pick for Montreal. I'm a big fan of him. He's a very good offensive puck-moving defenseman. However, I think he is going to drop a bit, but you will see him later on in the small draft. However, we're taking Seamus Casey. He's another very good puck-moving defenseman who I think has the upside to be solid top 3 defenseman on Montreal. Next up at 34, we have Arizona taking Jagger Firkus. He's a very good prospect. I think he could go in the first round for sure. Here I have him falling just outside the first round. He put up 80 points in 66 games with the Moose Jaw Warriors in WHL. So very good numbers, and he has the potential to be a very good, dynamic second-line playmaking right wing for Arizona. Next up at 38, we have Seattle taking Lucas Dalbel-Blues. There are concerns about his projectability and how this game will translate to the NHL, but nonetheless, he did put up really good numbers this year with the Mississauga Steelheads, and he can be a very good middle six winger. 36, with another pick, we have Arizona taking Callie Odelius. I think this would be a great pick. If he falls here, I think he will fall a little bit. I'm very high on him. I think he's he should easily be a first-round prospect. However, I think he is going to probably fall to at least one of the last few picks of the first round, if not the second round. He put up 30 points in 43 games, so really impressive numbers in the Swedish J20 League, and he has potential to be very good two-way top 4 defenseman. At 37, we have New Jersey taking Sam Rinzel. He's a very interesting prospect. He didn't make my top 50. He's a guy who I kind of debate on putting on, but I think he's a bit of a risk. He put up 38 points in 27 games in the U.S. high school system, playing in Minnesota with Chaska High, so solid numbers as a defenseman, but I think I do have some concerns about he is playing in high school, which is not great. I think he also did play a bit in the USHL where he did solid as well. But New Jersey, I think, they do need some defensemen. They took Slafkovsky at number 2, so I think they bring in a solid potential middle pairing bottom 4 defenseman, Rinzel. 38, we have Chicago taking Maverick Lamoureux. I'm not a big fan of this pick at all. I don't think Lamoureux is he's definitely not a top 50 prospect in this draft. He shouldn't be in the top 2 rounds, but the big thing is he's massive. He's 6'7", and I think there's potential with the skating. He's not that good of a skater right now, but there is upside there, which I think teams will like, and I think he will probably go in this top 40-ish range. He could even go in the first round, which would not be a great pick if whoever picks him, but teams do love that big defenseman. I honestly don't think he's going to be much more than a mid-third pairing defenseman, and he could probably just be like a Vancouver Canucks Tyler Myers type player, which isn't great, but at the end of the day, I think Chicago likes those big defensemen, and he could, I think, just because of his size, be a low-end NHLer. At 39, we have Ottawa taking another pick I'm not a fan of, in Reed Schaefer. He could also go in the first round. He's an interesting prospect. He's had his draft stock completely blow up and rise up a ton as of late, and that is because he had a lot of people think he had a good playoffs. He put up 58 points in 66 games with the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL. So not great, not overly impressive numbers at all. And he also did put up under a point per game in the playoffs as well for the WHL. So I think nothing that impresses me too much, but Ottawa's not a great team drafting. I think they're a team that would like to jump on Schaefer. I think he could even go higher on this, and they'd be lucky if he's available here. But maybe he can be a solid bottom 6 winger. At 40, we have Detroit taking Jack Hughes. So the other Jack Hughes, I could actually see him going to Montreal at 33. As a status, Kent Hughes, the Habs GM. But I think this would be a great pick here. He's a very solid two-way forward, put up good numbers last year playing in the NCAA, and I think he could be a solid middle six two-way guy. He's good defensively and also is good offensively as well. 41, we have Buffalo taking Noah Warren. He's a good big defenseman. He's 6'4". I think he can be a solid bottom 4 pairing defenseman. At 42, we have Anaheim taking Alexander Karabelov. He is Russian, so there's a concern there. But overall, I think he is a top 50 player in this draft. I think he would fit very well with Anaheim. At 43, with yet another pick of Arizona taking Philip Bystedt. I think this would be a great pick here at 43. Some people have concerns with this upside. and see him only as massive bottom six forward, but I think he does have really good skating, so we'll see where that skating can take him. But I think there is still good upside. He has good offensive instincts, IQ, and playmaking, so I think he could even be a solid like second line center, although there is the very good chance he kind of maxes out as a bottom six guy. Next up at 44, we have Columbus taking Roger Lorenz. I think this is an interesting pick. He would have 85 points in 60 games last year in the AJHL. The solid center. I think teams are really warming up to these players in the junioring leagues with guys like Cam McCarr and Kent Johnson coming out of them. And I think Roger Lorenz, although he's not quite as good as them, I think he still has the potential to be a solid middle six center. And if he ends up developing, this could end up being a great pick for Columbus. At 45 with another pick, we have Arizona taking Ty Nelson. I think they're going to take the chance on the offensive defenseman there. Again, not very impressive numbers. I think I go more in depth on him with my top 50 prospects rankings, but yeah, I think there's a lot of upside there, which Arizona could capitalize on here at 45. At 46 with Washington taking Christian Kyrou, Jordan Kyrou's younger brother. He can be a solid. I think his ceiling is a solid two-way offensive defenseman. He's good offensively. His defense is not horrible, but could use some work, and if he really wants to take on next step, he probably should improve it. At 47 in Minnesota taking Matthew Semenoff. He's a very hard worker, which I think a lot of teams will like. He has one of the highest motors in this draft, and he also is a good playmaker, has a good IQ and instinct, so I think the potential is there to be a very good middle six guy, even maybe a top six guy in this draft, or a top six forward, and I think Minnesota will really like this if they want to add to their depth on the team with a lot of the core already set. Next up at 48, we have Vegas taking Adam Sikora's with the first pick in the draft. Not overly impressive numbers, so he can be a solid forward in the NHL and maybe solid bottom six guy. 49, we have Seattle taking David Goyer. I think this is a great spot to take a risk on Goyer here. With potential to be a very good top six forward. He can be coach on his tendencies and improve some defense because the talent is there. I think he's first round level talent, and he put up great production. Some of that other stuff could see him falling a bit, but I think he could end up being a very good second line center for Seattle. At 50, we have Dallas taking Max Lindgren, another very good offensive defenseman here, who has a lot of potential, fairly underrated prospect, who could be a very solid top four defenseman. At 51, we have LA taking Gleb Trikazov. He's a Russian, so he's falling quite a bit. He's easily a first-round quality prospect. I could even, you could definitely make an argument for him being a top 20 prospect in this class. He's a very dynamic offensive player who has top six potential, but again, that Russian factor makes him drop. I think LA will like to add to their already, best prospect pool in the league, Trikazov with his very high potential. At 52, we have Detroit taking Servac Petrovsky. He's a very unknown player, and I doubt many of you really know who he is. I didn't actually know who he was until last night when I was finalizing this list, but he looked like a guy that I think Detroit would take. He put up 54 points in 65 games with the Owen Sound attack in the OHL, so very good numbers overall, and I think he's a quite underrated prospect who I could see Yzerman jumping on. Again, I think he's a fact that maybe a couple teams really know who he is, have an in-depth scouting with him, and maybe recognize him as a really good prospect in this draft. And we don't know who that is, but I would place my bets on Detroit having a high chance of being one of those teams. And I think they're going to look to upgrade their center depth still, and I think Petrovsky can be a solid third line center for them. At 53, with Anaheim taking Matthew Poitras. He's another solid forward to add to the depth of their team. At 54, we have Boston taking Isaiah George. He's a solid defenseman who I think can be a solid third pairing, maybe second pairing defenseman. I think they're going to take a defenseman here with the first pick of the draft. They need more defensemen behind McAvoy. I mean, they have Grizzly, but they don't have much there in terms of defense. I think they're going to want to add some more. I think Isaiah George can be a solid two-way defenseman for them. Next, about 55, with Winnipeg taking Mathis Savoie. He's a prospect just kind of all over the map. Some people have him as kind of a top 60 prospect. Others have him as kind of not even inside the top 100. And he put up 52 points in 68 games with Saginaw in the OHL. And I think he's a good playmaker, has a good offensive instincts, and can be a solid bottom six third line center for Winnipeg, who is probably going to need to improve on their depth. 56, we have Minnesota taking Matthias Havlid. I think this could be an amazing pick. I have him as a top 40 prospect in this draft. He's an undersized defenseman. He's 5'10", which I think is why he will fall a bit, and he's not as good as guys like Lane Hudson, who are other smaller defensemen, but I think this could be a potential steal here at 56, with Minnesota getting a very good defenseman who's good offensively and also is solid defensively as well. At 57, we have Chicago taking Julian Lutz. He's a German and put up solid numbers in the DEL last year. At 58, we have Seattle taking Paul Ludwinski. He played with the Kingston Frontenac, not overly impressive numbers, and he was playing with Shane Wright as well, which I think will concern some teams, but overall, talent-wise, he is very good, and I think he has potential to be a solid middle six guy if all goes well. At 59, we have Calgary taking Elias Salenson. He's fallen quite a bit. I think I had him at 8th in my in my first mock draft, which was like well over a year ago. So he's fallen quite a bit, but I think he still has the potential to be a solid two-way middle pairing defenseman if all goes well, and I think he is a Calgary type pick. At 60 of Carolina, finally taking Vladimir Grudinin off the board. If I could very much see this happening, if this happens, this is like arguably the biggest deal of the draft. I think Grudinin is such a good player. He's such a good defense. He's such a good offensive defenseman. But you have the Russian factor mixed with the fact that he is very undersized and small and gets knocked around a lot, even in the Russian Junior League. I think he will drop a lot. He won't be a first-round pick. I think he will drop. But Carolina is generally very good at drafting. I wasn't the biggest fan of their last draft, but before that, I think they've done a really good job of finding some late-round steals. They already have Andrei Svechnikov. They have a lot of Russians on that team, so I think adding Grudinin, I think he could be a potential Tony DeAngelo replacement. Carolina is very good at developing prospects, and I think a pairing with him, Jacob Slavin, with Grudinin really able to move the puck around and really do a lot of damage offensively. Jacob Slavin takes care of the defense, will be very dangerous in 4 or 5 years. At 61, we have Seattle with yet another pick, taking Topias Laininen. So they're getting, in my opinion, the top goalie prospect in the class. I think they have to take a goalie here. They have so many picks, and their goaltending was an absolute disaster last year. I think they should take a goalie. There's no elite guy. There's no Spencer Knight, Yaroslav Skarov, Jesper Walston, Sebastian Cossa, as we saw in the last 3 years. But you got Topias Laininen, Tyler Brennan, and Brett Brochu is, I think, also kind of underrated guy. But Laininen and Brennan are kind of the top 2 guys. Brennan was kind of underwhelming for me. He put up an .899 save percentage last year playing in the WHL, whereas Laininen put up a .916 along with 2.28 goals against average in the Finnish under 20 league. So solid numbers. I think he'd be a very solid starting goalie for Seattle. At 62 in Montreal, taking one of my favorite prospects in Jordan Dumais. I think he's going to fall a bit. I could definitely see him falling to even the 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th round. I think that's kind of a Joshua Watt type prospect. I think the upside is there. Put up really good numbers, 109 points every 60 games with the Halifax Mooseheads in the QMJHL. But again, I've seen some people say that he doesn't have much predictable skill for the NHL, and a lot of those points are like real NHL level points. But I still see the offensive upside there, and he can be like a very solid power play type top 6 guy if he does end up working out. I have him ranked at 19. I think he's going to be an incredible player in the NHL. At 63 of New York, taking Ludwig Persson off the board, so he's falling quite a bit. I think he's going to be one of those guys who's supposed to be kind of a high mid second round pick that ends up falling. But I think this is a great pickup here from New York. At 64, we have Ottawa taking Elias Pettersson. So not the Elias Pettersson of Vancouver. You see 2 guys with the same names of NHL stars here in this mock draft, but this is another Elias Pettersson. This one is a defenseman, and I think he could be a solid bottom pair defenseman in Ottawa. And finally, we have the Islanders with the last pick in this mock draft, taking Hunter Haight. He is also a player that I've just discovered recently, but I think he can be a very solid player in the NHL with good upside. He's great instincts, put up 41 points in 63 games as a center for the Barrie Colts, and can be a solid bottom 6 center as New York looks to improve their offensive depth. So there we go, that's my mock draft. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and comment down below what you think. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.